Regardless of when or how they arise, storms are about changing conditions and instability. And life at times can and will seem overwhelming and out of control. Things don't go our way. Circumstances seem too much for us to handle. Order gives way to chaos, and we find ourselves sinking in water that is deep, and the shore is distant and far off. The disciples are quick to make their storm about Jesus. They ask Jesus, "Do you not care that we are perishing? Jesus, do you not care that we are going to die?" We've probably all echoed their words in the storms of our lives. Haven't we all prayed, "Do something, fix it, help"? We've probably all echoed these words. In the midst of the storm, Jesus seems absent, passive, maybe even uncaring. How can Jesus sleep at a time like this? Sleeping Jesus is not the Jesus those disciples wanted. And sleeping Jesus is not the Jesus we want in the midst of our storm. Sleeping Jesus, however, is in the same boat, in the same storm as the disciples. Jesus is surrounded by the same water, the same wind, the same rain, the same waves as the disciples. Jesus' response is what's different. While the disciples fret and worry and fear, Jesus sleeps. The disciples want busyness and activity. Jesus sleeps. Jesus is at peace, and Jesus is still. His sleep reveals that the greater storm, the real threat, is not the wind and the rain and the waves and the water. The great storm is not in the disciples' circumstances, and our great storms are not in our circumstances. If we are paying attention to Jesus, we will see that the real storm is within us, just as it was within the disciples. The story is not about wind and waves and how they can churn themselves into a violent situation. Jesus is in the same boat, in the same wind, in the same waves that the disciples are in, and Jesus sleeps. The storm is about something far deeper. The real storm, the more threatening storm for the disciples, is not happening over the water. The real storm, the one that threatens them and us most, is always the storm that is churning and raging within us. This inner storm is the one that blows us off course. The real storm is more threatening for the disciples than what was happening over that water. Fear and vulnerability and powerlessness blew through them and blows through us. The sense of abandonment, the sense of the unknown, judgment and criticism of ourselves and others are the waves that pound us. Too often, anger, isolation, cynicism, or denial become our shelters from these storms. Peace, peace, peace. Be still. Jesus speaks to the wind and the sea. But Jesus isn't just speaking to the weather as much as Jesus is inviting his disciples to change. He's speaking to the wind and the waves within those disciples. The disciples have been pointing to what's going on outside them, and Jesus, as so often Jesus does, points to what's going on the inside. Jesus says, "Why are you afraid? Have you still no faith? Peace, peace, be still." I cannot help but understand this in terms of the Psalms. For the psalm that says, "Be still and know that I am God." Be still and know that I am Jesus. Be still. I got this. And I got you. Peace. be still. Jesus' words are more about us than the circumstances of our lives. Storms happen. Faith, more faith, better faith, stronger faith, the right kind of faith. No amount of faith will eliminate the storms of our lives. Let's be very clear about this. No amount of faith will eliminate the storms in our lives, because faith does not change the storm. Faith does not change our circumstances. Faith does not change our context. Faith changes us. It changes who we are. Faith does not take us around the storm. Faith does not chart a course that is different. Faith carries us. Faith pushes us through the storm. Faith allows us to see and know that Jesus is there with us. Faith is what allows us to be still. Faith is what allows us to know peace in the midst of the storm. It means we do not have to keep the storm inside of us. The Spirit of God blows through and within us more mightily than the winds of any storm. The power of God, a faith in Jesus, is stronger than any wave that might beat against us. The love of Jesus is deeper than any water that threatens to drown us. In every storm, Jesus is present, and his response is always the same: peace. Peace, be still. Last Sunday, I was driving home from the mountains, and I saw a billboard that read in huge red letters, "Jesus is the answer to all your problems, full stop." And I have to be honest with you. I have to be honest with you today. The cynic in me took over, and I thought to myself, Jesus doesn't make the problems go away. Jesus doesn't make the storms go away. Jesus doesn't make my life or anybody else's life easier. Jesus doesn't pay the light bill. Jesus isn't here. Jesus isn't putting food on people's table. And I felt my chest get really tight. Believing in Jesus won't change another person's position. Peace. Peace. Be still. That's what Jesus does. That's how Jesus solves the problem. And then you and I can feed. You and I can heal. You and I can love our neighbors well. Jesus, on that car ride home, called me out, just as he called out the disciples on that boat. Matt, you of little faith, peace. And now go and do. Go and be the person that I have called you to be. Jesus has called all of us out in those places. Jesus says to all of us, peace, be still. So where is our faith today? Is our faith caught up in the frustration of a billboard, or in the roaring wind and the crashing waves swamping the boat of life? Or is our faith in the good news of God in Jesus Christ, who is saying to all of us, peace,